So with that, let me welcome you to the second session of the day, which is business lessons. A brief introduction. So the new age businesses which have been listed have been disruptive clearly, and those who have created these businesses have not had a tried and tested path to work on, right? So in the next session, what we intend to bring to you are the trials and tribulations of walking the uncharted path and the business lessons that consequently come with those. So we have the honor of having with us Sanjeev, Bikchandani, and Falguni Nayyar in discussion with Mr. Leo Puri in our next session on business lessons. A brief introduction to each of them. Falguni founded Nyka in 2012. Nyka has fast emerged as India's leading beauty retailer. Before Nyka, Falguni spent around 18 years at Kotak Mahindra Bank, leading several businesses. She was the MD of Kotak Mahindra Investment Bank and director at Kotak Securities. We also have with us Sanjeev Bikchandani, who's the founder of InfoEdge India Limited, which owns Naukri.com. InfoEdge, incidentally, was the first internet company to list on the Indian stock exchanges. In addition to Naukri.com, InfoEdge also owns 99 Acres, Jeevan Sathi, Shiksha.com, etc. And why he's well placed to be on this panel is also because InfoEdge has invested in approximately 50 startups, some of which are very well-known names, including Zomato, Policy Bazaar, Shop Kirana, Ustra, and DotPay. Moderating the conversation is a very well-known person, Leo Puri. Leo is the chairperson at JP Morgan South and Southeast Asia. He has over 30 years of experience over roles spanning consulting and finance. In his previous roles, he's been MD and CEO at UTI Asset Management, where he led the whole company's transformation from state-owned to being what it is now, an independent board-managed institution. He's also served as MD and general partner at Warburg Pincus and senior partner at McKinsey & Company. So without wasting too much time, I'll hand it over to Leo to conduct the session.
Well, thank you. And it's an enormous pleasure to be here with Falguni and Sanjeev, both of whom are truly role models and pioneers for all the exciting developments that Startup India has seen over the last decade. And really, I thought the best place to start would be to understand how they conceived their own journey, and especially around this theme of disruption, because all startups, in a sense, are born out of an idea of creative destruction. That's, in a way, the good side, if you like, because sometimes disruption can be double-sided. But for societies to move forward, you do need to break the mold. And both of them, in a way, have broken the mold. But in the process of breaking the mold, often you will encounter both brickbats as well as bouquets, because there is an element of Darwinism in this creative destruction. You will displace, you will change the ecosystem. You really do, in a way, move the furniture around a lot. And it's I think, an issue which is gaining a lot of, it's a lot of debate around the world as to whether this is ultimately good for society or not. I clearly think it is, but I'd love to hear, Falguni, from you. When you thought about these trade-offs and your place in the ecosystem and Darwinism versus cooperation, how have you found that process so far? And how did you conceive of it when you set out?
I think when I entered the market in 2012, I had noticed that beauty was a very big business in the West as well as in the East. When you go to all the department stores, some of the biggest stores like Harrods or Saks Fifth Avenue, the ground floor would be filled with beauty products. And somehow in India, we didn't have this kind of penetration for beauty. Beauty was a small industry that was not really taking off. And there were a lot of issues. And most of the time we heard about global brands leaving India, whether it was any luxury brand or whether any kind of a beauty brand. They were not getting excited about the Indian market. And actually my starting point was to find an opportunity in India, which would be like early, because I believe that since I was a professional to an entrepreneur rather than coming from a big industry house, I used to joke about it those days that I need to enter an industry before Tata, Birlas and Ambanis do, which is what exactly happened. We started and we created the market. Beauty was not a big category at all. And it was just that I think we observed the first principles, how consumers buy beauty. And we thought that the advice and experience was at the center of their beauty experience. And we gave that on a vertical beauty website. And in those days, most of the conversation was don't come in the way of customer checking out quickly and leaving the, app or a website. And in that environment, we actually, you see, Mummy, in that environment, we actually went ahead and put a lot of content right in the middle of the website. So I think that led to a very differentiated website, and it led to us being able to really give consumer what they wanted. Many first principles were followed, and I think it was good with that. I did not know beauty. I sometimes joke about it, that even if I thought I knew business, I didn't know beauty, I didn't know retail, and I didn't know technology. And what that did was that we looked at the consumer first approach, and we looked at what does the consumer want and how can we give it to them in a very unique way. So most of our work went towards that, and it didn't come from any place of trying to displacing anyone, but we more created the market.
Yeah. So it was a smooth process. You found competitors, retailers, distributors, brand owners generally welcoming the business model you were bringing, and do they still welcome it as you gain share and relevance and perhaps negotiating leverage?
Brand partners are very important to us, and some of our biggest brand partners are the biggest consumer companies of the world, which is whether it is Hindustan Lever or it is L'Oreal and Estee Lauder Group, and many of the Korean brands and others that we brought to the table. They're some of the biggest beauty brands in the world. I think they really appreciate what Nyka brought in terms of art of retailing. And they've been some of our best partners, and even till today, very appreciative of what Nyka has created in terms of a platform to be able to sell this category of products well into the market. In terms of competition, I think initially competition did not believe that online can take major market share, because even today, online beauty is only 8% of the market. So, 92% is sitting somewhere else. So most of the competitors did not take beauty seriously. Of course, we decided to be omni-channel. And even in a physical retail, we have grown now past our competition. But I think most of the work was towards creating the market, to which now other people have all woken up. People who had said that beauty is not a great business. In fact, when I was starting, everybody told me, if you want to do e-commerce, you should do electronics or fashion. Why are you doing beauty? So in many ways, my starting point was that, I believe that there are a lot of naysayers, but entrepreneur has a belief in their vision, and one goes about building it and creating really a value for the customer. And that's the best way. I mean, most of these Uber or each of those are problems that have been solved totally out of, in a very innovative way. And I think Nyka has also done that in terms of beauty consumption in the country.
That's good to hear. And turning to you, Sanjeev, I mean, you, of course, built Naukri very early on, and you've then gone on to mentor dozens of startups, including some that have come to market like Zomato and Policy Bazaar and so on. I mean, how do you think about this process of breaking the mold and where that takes your business model?
So I'll tell you a little bit of history. When we started Naukri in 97, there were only 14,000 internet accounts in the country. We were not thinking of disruption. We had no ambition to disrupt. I had been drifting for 7 years as a small-time entrepreneur, doing a bit of this, a bit of that. I did about 10, 15 things. Anything to survive, get by, teaching, training, whatever, salary surveys, right? And as an experiment, we got 29 newspapers from around the country into our office every week. And we would take the appointment ads, rehash them in our own words, and we put them on the net, and we called it Naukri. And traffic began to come. We hit a hot button, right? And my ambition then was, we were 12 lakh a year, 1 lakh a month turnover company. And, in the first 10 years of being an entrepreneur, for roughly 6 years, I couldn't take a salary. So I was teaching on the side at business schools around Delhi to somehow earn some pocket money. And my limited ambition was that if we can get 1,000 companies to give us 500 rupees for a job listing and get every month, right? We will get 5 lakhs a month of top line, and that will be 60 lakhs a year. And if you can do this in 3 years, the company will grow 5x in 3 years, and we'll make a profit, and I can take a salary, right? Disruption was not something we thought about. At that time, the internet was a very niche medium. It was not going to disrupt. There was no venture capital. There was no .com valuation. There was no nothing. So I have never thought of entering a market to disrupt. We have always thought of entering a market to solve an unsolved problem, to get some customers, to get some revenue going, to somehow make a profit in a few years' time, right? Now, in the process, after 20 years, when you look back and you say, hey, there's been a disruption, that's a incidental outcome for us. We don't seek to disrupt. We seek to serve customers. We seek to solve unsolved problems. We seek to have positive unit economics. We seek to build network effects. We seek to build a moat. We seek to build a defensible business with IP.
No, I like that. And I think that contrasts with if you hear what many of the young entrepreneurs have to do in their pitches today, they have to underscore the fact that they are actively seking to
disruption is something
in order to attract capital.
Yeah, disruption is something you put in your PowerPoint. Pitch to 20-year-old, mid-30-year-old MBAs who many of whom never actually run a business, so that they can cut a check.
Yeah, though that is. But what if you look at some of the tussles though that are recurring today as people have pushed into, you see that in the disturbances around retail distribution. You see that in certain sectors and it's pharma, consumer goods, and so on. And the question is whether the entrepreneurs are handling that, if you like, in the ideal way. The entrepreneurs, their boards, their investors. Do you just see it as inevitable that this is just the price of progress? The fact that these are recurring? I mean, maybe Sanjeev, you first, and then Falguni could offer a perspective as well.
Look, whenever there's change, somebody benefits and somebody doesn't benefit as much, right? Now, if the whole market shifts to pharma sales online, whether it's 1mg or it's PharmEasy or whoever, there will be pushback from your traditional channels, right? We are seeing it in groceries. We will see it in pharma. I don't know if Falguni has witnessed any of this, but really, in our case, what we did was we said we don't want to harm anybody. So in the beginning, when we began to list jobs, we had a clear choice. Should we accept jobs only from companies which are employing people, or should we allow in also recruitment firms? And we took a call that this is an open platform. Anybody can come and list a job as long as it's a legitimate, valid job and it's not a fraud. You can list it, whether you're a recruitment firm or you are you're an employer. And we were mimicking the newspaper model. It says a recruitment firm advertises in a newspaper, and so does the end employer. So it's open. And why should we shut somebody out? Now, it so happens that it really benefited us because roughly about 25 to 30% of revenue today comes from recruitment firms. But more importantly, maybe 50 or 60% of the jobs come from recruitment firms. And it's jobs that gets us traffic. So it's actually worked for us. So in an ideal world, if you can create a win-win-win, nothing like it. But if you can't, then maybe you can be polite about it.
Yeah, well, that's well said. Falguni, do you want to just comment on this point?
I'll just come in. So I think from our perspective also, clearly as a retailer, you need to make sure that your brand partners are clearly, opted in with what your vision is and what you want to do. Otherwise, really, you don't have products to sell. But even in terms of looking at other intermediaries and empowering the whole ecosystem. So even Nyka is moving to a eB2B model where all the products that are available on our platform directly for consumers can be picked up by the retailers all throughout the country, and they can onward sell it to the consumers. So I think, again, we think that's a service we are giving both to our brand partners and also in that case, retailers who will be our consumers, but then through them for the consumer reach. So I think finally, brands have an objective of reaching, the customers they need to reach, and we want to be an intermediary in that. rather than try to say we'll only do it one way or the other.
Yeah, no, I think that's incredibly important, because I think one of the things people are searching for is a way to reconcile the necessity of breaking the mold and disruption with, if you like, some level of symbiosis and so on. So I think it's going to get more and more attention.
There's a line which all of us have heard, sabka saath, sabka vikas. Why,
Yeah.
Why harm anybody? Do your best to carry everybody with you.
Well, I think you're right that to refer to that, because I think the Prime Minister, as was said earlier, has declared 16th of January Startup Day. So it's now got the attention of politicians and is right up there with Swachh Bharat as a slogan. I'm not sure what the politicians quite interpret when they have put startup on that pedestal, or what their expectations are. But you can be sure it's a double-edged sword in terms of expectations that they will have from this community. But I mean, overall, a good thing. One of the other questions, of course, somewhat related to this is to what extent have many of these successes been based on availability of capital and the pursuit of growth at any cost ahead of profits? And at what point, if you like, does that balance start to shift? And to what extent is it, in a sense, fair game versus predatory, etc.? And I know you both represent, in a sense, a more traditional view of the world in some sense, but I would still like to hear, what you have to say, and because this is a very live issue as we speak. So, Agni, how have you thought about that whole trade-off?
So I think one of the reality is that internet since 2015 has given a possibility to grow at a very fast clip. I think one of the things all of our businesses have to deliver is a very high pace of growth, because the market sizes are immense and there's a huge digital adoption. And as a result, the opportunity is very large. And while you said winner takes it all, even if you don't look at it that way, I always say that one has to stay ahead of the competition and add so much value to the consumer that really you don't need to look back on competition, and you just have your relationship with the customer and you walk ahead of where the rest of the pack is walking. So I think with that vision, there is a need for some amount of investment and obviously, like I heard in the earlier thing also, the availability of private equity and venture capital has really enabled a lot of dreams to come true. But as far as Nyka is concerned, I always built it with a unit economics metrics in mind, with a clear path to profitability, because it came from sustainability. What we say is one of our values is clearly sustainability in every action. And if you want to be a long-term value-add retailer to your brand partners, you need sustainability. And I think businesses that are driven only by revenue line are never built right. Maybe in the short term, they chase very high valuation. And I think initially a couple of fundraisers, we used to raise so little money. Journalists not want to write about it, because they were like, okay, this is hardly any money you're raising. So Nyka has been an example that in a market where billions of dollars were available with Amazon and Flipkart and others, and many other e-commerce companies, I think Nyka has been very prudent and hardly raised any money so far. We've raised all of $100 million so far and come so far. So I think in many ways, I joke about it that I think in India, you need passion and brain power rather than too much money to grow. But I think that is true. I think with a lot of passion and commitment and right thinking, you can get ahead.
No, it's quite remarkable that you didn't fall prey to the temptation to just keep burning more and more cash, which, as you say, would have been easily available to you. And you chose to focus on the unit economics. That's not always the case. I mean, Sanjeev, what's your sense on that? I mean, when money is being pushed towards you and there appears to be plenty of white space and an opportunity, what's the right set of values or frame within which to think about how to handle that process as an entrepreneur?
I think it's been proved time and again that when companies get too much money too easily and too soon, they tend to spend it suboptimally. Right? Money has to be slightly scarce for you to value it and then see what are the competing uses and how best to utilize it. In our own case, of course, I became an entrepreneur in 1990. Right. And in those days, there was no venture capital, never heard of it. There was no angel investments, nothing. External financing meant bank loans. Bank loan, you didn't get as a services company because banks lent on collateral. They want hard assets. So you had to actually survive on the customer's money. It basically meant that you produced something, you sold something, which the customer really valued, right? And therefore was willing to pay for it. And in our case, we would charge 100% advance. So we had no money. I was broke, right? We started this company with 2,000 rupees in 1990, right? Out of a servant quarter above the garage. And we didn't have a computer even. We used to sneak into a friend's office at night with a duplicate key to use the computer from midnight to 4 a.m., right? And that's how we started. So, we were very, very frugal. And that remains in our DNA, that you've got to be profitable. Now, when we did raise venture capital, in 10 years later, in April 2000, we raised all of 7.3 crores, of which we only used 5 crores. Right? So we were by then completely schooled to be frugal. Now, since then, times have changed. Right? The truth also is that if your competitor is getting bagfuls of money, you don't have a choice but to respond. Now, we try and nudge all the companies we invest in towards the right unit economics, towards the right metrics on growth and margin and perhaps profit at some point in time, right? But the fact also is that we're not the only investor on the cap table. The fact also is that there's this whole tsunami of capital that's coming to India, there's a new kind of moral hazard in the VC and PE industry, which is if I'm running a $1 billion fund every 2-3 years, right? I'm raising a new fund, and I'm on 220 economics. So 2% is 20 million. Now on 20 million, I can die and go to heaven. 20 million a year, I can die and go to heaven. I don't need the carry, actually, right? And if I run a tight team, I'll only invest in so many companies, which means I'll stuff those companies more money than they actually need, perhaps, or require. Because my problem is I don't deploy the money. Return baad mein dekhenge. Yeah. And on 2%, I can, I'm happy. So, but that is perhaps the order of the day. When you print $4 trillion or $5 trillion of money, more and more of these things will happen. So money
is that a phenomenon?
So money has been related. Money has been related.
Yeah. And is that a phenomenon I guess you just have to live with, as you say? I mean, and accept. What do you do? Do you walk away when you see that situation? Do you stay in the fray? And look, it's a real world problem. It's a real world problem, right? It's not going away tomorrow, I think.
Well, the Fed has printed its way out of trouble all the time since 2007-8, since Lehman. It probably will continue to do it if the past 15 years are any indication of their conduct. Now, crypto may be a disruptor because crypto, there's a limited amount of crypto you can use, and let's see where that goes. I think if the tapering is serious, if the interest rates go up, there may be some issues. But yeah, by and large, I think capital will be available. But there's a bit of a paradox. So if you look at the aggregate amount of capital that's available, it's very large. If you look at who's getting it, there's an abundance and there's a scarcity. So if you're one of the chosen few, you have investors beating down your door to give you money. But if you're not, you have a hard time raising it. So the concentration of capital that's coming into private companies is centered around only a very small bunch of companies.
Yeah, that's the winner takes all mindset.
And therefore, is it available? Every answer is no.
Yeah.
It's, if Zomato is being identified as a winner, they'll get lots of money. So as policies are. But if you're not among the winners and you've dropped out halfway, you don't get it.
Yeah. So I think that's the Darwinian world. I think there's fair enough. So, again, related to this, I guess there's one of the things that the startup world is coming to terms with is this so-called ESG. Whether you think of it as environment, sustainability, governance, just the notion that, as Uday said, you need to be both entrepreneurial and professional. There are a lot of Gen Y, Gen Z folks who might see that as oxymoronic, right? That, I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. I mean, you really are there to fundamentally break the mold. So what on earth does it actually mean to do this? And perhaps may not go beyond box ticking, if at all they're required to comply with this. But again, my own view is it's probably now unavoidable that these are very real, deep-rooted trends, questions around stakeholder capitalism or sustainability or purpose. And again, Falguni, you've obviously thought about this. I think it's quite central to how you're building your business. And again, it would be great for many of our audience to hear how you position this in your journey, as it were.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I think it became very evident to us. We are a young company. Our customers are very young. It was just we discovered that 90% of our customers were Gen Z and millennials. And with that customer profile, they care a lot for authenticity. They care a lot for sustainability and governance. So, and we are a very social media centric company. We talk to our customers using social media, and that's our strength. So we talk to them every day. But social media also is a place where they can also tell you something back. So they have their opinions, they express it on social media, and they're communicating with you. So it was very evident to us that authenticity and all of these things, governance and sustainability, matter to our customers. And we don't have a choice but to be that way. And I think culturally also we are a young company, which is also has most of the employees are also of similar thinking. So very easily it came to us. And authenticity is a small word, but it is a big responsibility on the shoulder. Trust and authenticity, what it means is that every action of the company has to reflect, because that's when the true authenticity comes. So as a company, most of these, inclusivity, equal opportunity for all, sustainability, greener planet. I mean, most of those choices are clearly known to us that we have to make the right choices. And I think it's become a way of life for us. So I'm just very thankful that, the customer needs and anyway, societal needs, as well as, what company wants to do. Everything is now unified. It's just one, we call it like a one view. And it's not so diverse that, oh, they want this, but we want this. I think like when you start looking at every stakeholder and you want to look after every stakeholder in a balanced manner, and you're not there only for looking after your investors, or only looking after your employees, or only looking after your customers, or even the society at large. Once you become a balanced stakeholder, I think all this falls into place in a very nice way.
Yeah, no, that's well said, I think. And another of the themes which is drawing a lot of attention is this, what I call the men behaving badly issue in the sector. I mean, because people in this sector, and both of you are good examples, are role models now. And everybody is looking up to you, hence the startup day, etc. And this is a global phenomenon, not unique to India. There is the countercurrent of people who just feel that rebellion and being an anti-hero, if you like, in some sense, is the preferred way they'd rather position themselves. And you had this in the US. I can probably take the names. I won't take them in India, but famously with WeWork and Uber, etc. These are all much documented and written about, not necessarily a personal or firm view, but I can safely say that these have been commented on. And it's a lot of concern. And we have seen in India too, the willingness to adopt this posture where anything goes. I make the rules of the road. I drive as I want to. And if there is some scorched earth behind me in terms of people or suppliers or regulations or anything else, as long as I've got capital backing me, none of this matters. And again, I mean, Sanjeev, I don't know how we should be thinking about this. It's not a huge issue, but it's only because, as I said, these people are role models, they're celebrities, frankly, up there with cricketers almost these days. So, how should we just let it go and say it's harmless? It just goes with the territory. It's what people who are creative and building great businesses have a right to do. They've always done it. Or is there something more required, if you like, as a response to this?
Well, I think there's enough response happening already behind the scenes on some of the incidents that you are not naming. Enough investors and others have called me up. I would imagine some sort of action would happen. See, there are consequences. right? And the people need to be careful. People and social media will kill you. Investors get upset if their reputation is tarnished. You'll find it harder to attract board members, independent directors. There will be checks and balances. Let me assure you. You cannot have bad conduct and say, I cannot be touched. You will be touched.
So you are saying self-correcting mechanisms, even short
It's not perfect. It's not perfect. This is some of the stuff has come from left field unexpectedly, but there will be consequences.
And I think because you have a wide sweep, that's why I'm keen to get your perspective, not from just your own companies you built, but because you have participated in the growth of many others and talked to a lot of people in the ecosystem.
So,
where is the self-correcting? Does it have to be regulation? Because in India, the typical challenge we face is that you get an equal and opposite reaction. Which doesn't necessarily solve the problem.
I think existing regulations are adequate to deal with any sort of criminal threat. I think fundamentally, beyond the point, Leo, people don't want to do business with you if they don't like you.
Yeah.
When was the last time you said, I hate this guy, but I'll do business with him? It doesn't happen. So,
yeah.
And at a bigger level, if you go into, there are enough lessons of history. If we only take lessons from history, forget long history of the world, but even if you look at the short corporate history of even just last 50 to 70 years, there are enough examples that finally what matters is hard work and the right approach to building companies. And I think that is what is sustainable. So I think sometimes, I think it's the age and inexperience. And I think people have to learn to really look at it from a perspective of, they carry a lot of influence. And to that extent, it's important that they have more balanced emotions. It's a roller coaster ride, but one doesn't have to get elated with successes, nor get too down with your failures or tough times. And tough times will come. So I think it's always good to, have seen the world, and also having been through sometimes tough times, that nothing stays up all the time. So I think one has to be very open to being humble at the core and seeing, are you adding value? And is your company adding value and creating something that will sustain? You're the guardian of the capital you've got, right? So.
Yeah, no, I think that's very well said. I think we might be at the end of our session from what I can see, actually. So so as moderators, I don't know, are there questions we should be taking, or is this something that is not, I don't know if Anup is there and can guide us on that. Otherwise, I'll.
Hi, Leo, we have a couple of minutes. We have 5 minutes. So if there's something.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I'm happy to also give the audience some opportunities here. So is there something?
There's a question from the audience. I can read it out to you.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Yeah. So someone has asked, what was the single motivating factor, and this is for Sanjeev, I believe, to start an enterprise in '97 when you were already a well-paid executive in an MNC? And it was difficult in that era when internet was, fledgling. You didn't have too many internet connections. Another question is, Zomato, it had a successful IPO, but there's still some way to profitability. So how do you think that will pan out?
Okay, so I'll answer the first question first. So I quit my job in 1990, not in 97. For the first 7 years, I drifted and did a whole bunch of small things, just somehow to survive, right? Fundamentally, I had taken a life decision. I had worked 5 years in 2 multinationals, 3 years before my MBA, 2 years after my MBA. And I came to the conclusion that this is not the life I want to lead. And I did a lot of soul searching. I went through an existential crisis and listen, if I continue in this path, I can predict my future. If I do well in 5 years, I can sit in that cabinet, 10 years in that cabinet, and in that cabinet in 25 years, maybe CEO of a company. But I was looking for purpose. And I did not find purpose in that path. And so I said, I will give up a salary for independence and let's see what happens. I have a qualification. If I'm defeated by the world, I'll come back in 3 or 5 years and take up a job, right? And I went with that in my mind, and I had no big idea, no vision, nothing. I just made a life choice. I drifted, somehow got by, and there's huge value in drift. You get a lot of time to reflect. We stumbled upon a small idea, a seemingly small idea, which turned out to be a big idea after 7 years, and that's how it happened. For me, it was a life choice. I did not want to be part of the cookie cutter mold of a successful corporate career. And I was fortunate. I got this realization when I was 26 or 27. If I'd got it at 40, by then I would have a house loan and a bank car loan and, kids to put through college. I have no way. I would have done it later. Right? The second question is Zomato IPO. Look, Zomato is in a position where if it slows down its growth, it can make a profit. Right? All the big investors are telling them it's okay to not make a profit, go for growth. But with the notice of a couple of quarters, should they want to pivot to profit, they can. So there is that comfort, right? I think that addresses that question. There's some more questions, I think.
I think that was actually, I'd like to hear Falguni's response to this, because having known Falguni as a successful...
Yeah, there's actually, Leo, there's a question for Falguni in the chat. Between growth and profitability, what do you choose today after your listing? And
actually, I wanted to hear the response, if I may, actually on this, because it's a very different story. As a successful investment banker, 18, 20 years into a company, it's a very interesting choice to have made, Falguni. And I always wanted to ask you that, actually. What, at that point, what possessed you to do what you did?
Yeah, so I'll answer both the questions, actually. So the first is very simple. I wanted to experience entrepreneurship. And I think Sanjeev said he did it on the right side of mid-career, and I also did it on the right side of the mid-career as my career was nearing an end. As I was nearing 50, I said my last 10 years of my career, which actually as an entrepreneur can be longer, but as a professional, I thought that was the last 10 years. I said I want to extend it by starting a business of my own. And I always believe that, I saw the passion the entrepreneurs have to create something from scratch and build a lot of value, early stage value, by seeing an idea and having the passion to find the solutions and create a solution. So I think I was really obsessed by wanting to experience a journey. And I called it a journey rather than any particular aim to achieve, So I just wanted to experience the journey. And with that kind of mindset, I jumped in. And I'm so glad I did, because it's been one of the best years of my life. And I've also really enjoyed every minute of my work. On balance between growth and profitability, I think from early days, very early days, we of course used to have marketing costs which were higher than our margins. So I used to wonder that time that am I the biggest fool in town trying to spend more to market to get less margins, However, from early days, we've tried to achieve balance between growth and profitability. And I think if our IPO was any reflection with the kind of investor, thumbs up we got in terms of our strategy was immense. They did not once ask us, like we used to expect that many investors will ask us, but you hardly have any money on your books. How will you compete with some of the biggest players? So I think they are respecting Nyka's balance between growth and profitability. But Sanjeev is absolutely right. Today, Nyka also can show much better profitability if we don't grow. All of us have much larger customer base that we can reach out to. And a certain amount of growth pace is very important for being a player in the long run. So I think it's a balance. I think Nyka chose it to make it like a balance rather than acquire a lot of customers upfront. But we will also continue to acquire customers over a long period of time.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think we probably really are, now at the end of the time. But I just want to thank both of you. I think two remarkable individuals, pioneers, truly role models as well. And Falguni, with your sort of quiet, determined, understated focus, and Sanjeev with your wide-ranging interests and flamboyance. I think you both really demonstrated the values, professionalism, sustainability, which I think is a beacon for this sector. So huge privilege to have had the chance to hear from both of you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you, team.
Thank you.